The transformation Gabourey Sidibe has undergone will shock you, not for the reasons gossip blogs push, but because her story reveals the brutal truth of what fame, survival, and the fight for selfhood actually cost a woman whose entire existence was judged before she ever spoke a word. Gabourey made history with an Oscar nomination that should have launched a legendary Hollywood career. Yet behind the applause and bright lights, she was battling a storm that would drag her into impossible emotional territory, forcing her to choose between survival and the approval of a world that never wanted her to win in the first place. And that choice, choosing life over validation, would cost her the body-positive crown the public tried to pin on her, ignite accusations of betrayal, and leave her fighting wars she never imagined. To understand the weight of that journey, you have to return to where it all began. May 6, 1983, Brooklyn, New York, in the Bedford-Stuyvesant neighborhood where survival was instinct, invisibility was armor, and her body became a battleground before she ever learned her ABCs. Growing up fat and black meant Gabourey learned painfully early that her body was public property, something strangers felt entitled to mock, dissect, and criticize. And even the people meant to love her weren't always kind. Her father casually called her Fatso, a nickname that might sound like harmless teasing but landed like a verdict, teaching her that her weight was the only thing about her anyone noticed. With a Senegalese Muslim upbringing layered on top, the expectations were suffocating. She was supposed to grow up to be a good Muslim wife, grateful for whatever man might overlook her size long enough to marry her, a woman whose worth depended on her ability to shrink herself in every way that mattered. These pressures, family, culture, society, wove together into a lifelong war with self-esteem, identity, and the desperate desire to belong. Battles that followed her into adulthood, and one day followed her into a hospital room where doctors would tell her she was dying. But long before that moment, she was building armor the way only fat black girls know how to. She learned to be funny, to disarm people by making jokes about herself before they could, to fill rooms with her personality because her body already filled the spaces people resented. She went to community college, worked as a receptionist at a mental health clinic, answering phones and managing paperwork, and lived a life that felt small, quiet, predictable, safe only because it never asked her to dream beyond what she was told she could be. She had no acting experience, no Hollywood connections, no reason to believe she would ever be extraordinary. She thought she was forgettable, ordinary, invisible. She was wrong, but discovering that truth would cost her more than she could imagine. In 2008, she stumbled across an open casting call for a film called Push, based on Sapphire's novel about an abused, illiterate Harlem teenager. Casting directors wanted someone with no acting experience, someone authentic, someone whose pain was already etched into their bones. Gabourey auditioned, she was cast, and overnight her life transformed. Precious premiered at Sundance in 2009, and critics were stunned, calling her performance raw, devastating, and unlike anything Hollywood had ever seen. When wider release came, her face flooded every magazine cover, every talk show, every red carpet, and the Academy nominated her for Best Actress, making her only the 5th black woman in history to ever receive that honor. At 26, the girl who once felt invisible was suddenly competing against Meryl Streep, Helen Mirren, and Sandra Bullock. It was the Cinderella story Hollywood loves to brag about, except Hollywood wasn't prepared for their Cinderella to be fat, dark-skinned, and unwilling to perform gratitude for the scraps they handed her. The backlash came fast and vicious. Howard Stern mocked her, saying her size meant she would never work again, that her nomination was a fluke, that the industry had no place for someone who looked like her, predicting she'd return to answering phones within a year. The cruelty didn't stop there. Writers, critics, anonymous commenters all echoed the same message. She didn't belong. She wasn't the right kind of black actress. She wasn't the right size, the right shape, the right face, the right anything. Her Oscar nomination didn't launch a major career. It launched a decade-long battle just to prove she had the right to exist in an industry that had already decided she didn't. And beneath the interviews, the gowns, the red carpets, she was fighting a second war, the one against her own body. In her memoir, This Is Just My Face, Try Not to Stare, she reveals heartbreaking truths about the physical and emotional battles she had been fighting since childhood, battles Hollywood would weaponize against her the moment she stepped into the spotlight. Her rise was miraculous. Her survival was unimaginable. Her transformation, when you finally understand it, isn't shocking because it's dramatic. It's shocking because it is the story of a woman who chose to save her life, even when an entire world preferred her to sacrifice it for their entertainment. Gabourey Sidibe's truth is far heavier, far more intricate, and far more heartbreaking than the world ever realized, because behind the bright interviews, the red carpet smiles, and the history-making Oscar nomination was a young woman fighting wars inside herself that fame only made more visible and more unbearable. She revealed in her memoir that she had struggled with bulimia throughout college, purging after meals in frantic, desperate attempts to control her body in a world that treated her existence as a mistake, and she faced depression so suffocating that she contemplated suicide, quietly weighing different methods of ending her life while forcing herself to appear functional in front of everyone who assumed she was fine. And when she finally worked up the courage to tell her mother she was drowning emotionally, her mother Alice laughed, brushing off her daughter's mental health crisis as dramatic exaggeration, not realizing that dismissal cut deeper than any insult, teaching Gabourey that even the people meant to protect her could not see her pain as real or worthy of compassion. That moment hardened something inside her, and when Precious made her famous, instead of relief or healing, the pressure on her body and identity multiplied. Suddenly, her size was not just a private insecurity, it was a public debate, a headline, a trending topic, an endless stream of commentary from strangers who believed her body was open for discussion, criticism, and moral judgment. She suffered panic attacks, full-body breakdowns where she couldn't breathe, couldn't stop crying, couldn't steady herself, moments where she vomited from emotional overload and then felt a brief sense of relief, only for the cycle to repeat. Every outfit she wore, every picture she posted, every appearance she made became an opportunity for the world to decide whether her body was acceptable that day. Fame didn't protect her. It intensified the cruelty. Luxury stores treated her like a thief. She was followed by security, watched like a problem, and in one humiliating moment inside a Chanel store in Chicago, a saleswoman redirected her toward the exit, assuming someone who looked like her could not belong there. Only when customers recognized her as an Oscar-nominated actress did the woman's tone change, proving that prejudice never disappears. It only pauses for people with status. In her memoir, she wrote, "I was in a war with my body for a long time," acknowledging that she hated herself so deeply for so many years that she used food to numb the pain and then punished herself for eating, a vicious cycle that was mentally destroying her while simultaneously damaging her physically. And underneath all of that emotional torment, something far more dangerous was happening. In 2016, what she feared became reality. She was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, a disease that ran in her family but also reflected the years of emotional eating, stress, and internal battles that had been tearing her apart. This wasn't about aesthetics, this was life or death. She admitted that she constantly worried about losing her toes, her eyesight, or her future, and that fear forced her to confront a truth she had avoided for years, that without intervention she could die. Her older brother Ahmed was diagnosed around the same time, confirming a genetic predisposition. But for Gabourey, the diagnosis was a mirror she could no longer avoid. She didn't want to live in fear anymore, and she realized that body positivity slogans could not stop diabetes, could not reverse insulin resistance, could not protect her from a future filled with medical complications. And so, in May 2016, she made the decision that would redefine her life: laparoscopic bariatric surgery, a procedure that removed nearly 80% of her stomach. It was a choice that terrified her, not because of the surgery itself, but because she knew that the moment she revealed it, the world that once celebrated her as a symbol of fat acceptance would accuse her of selling out. And she was right. Gabourey had become an icon for fat women everywhere, especially fat black women who rarely saw themselves represented with dignity. Her confidence, her defiance, her refusal to shrink herself had inspired thousands. Choosing surgery felt like a betrayal to them, like she was admitting the world's cruelty was correct all along. She braced herself for backlash, and it came. Strangers online, voices within the body-positive movement, people who once praised her began accusing her of giving in, of choosing the easy way out, of abandoning the very principles she once championed. But they didn't understand, because they couldn't. For her, this wasn't about beauty, it was about survival. After surgery, her body changed in ways that felt both liberating and terrifying. She lost weight steadily, her diabetes came under control, her mobility improved, and her health stabilized for the first time in years. But even as the transformation brought relief, it also forced her to reconcile the impossible tension between her public identity and her private reality. She wasn't betraying body positivity, she was saving her life. And for the first time, she understood that loving her body didn't mean leaving it to die. It meant fighting for it, caring for it, protecting it, even when the world tried to twist that decision into shame. Her journey wasn't about becoming smaller. It was about becoming stronger, choosing survival, and reclaiming power in a world that once convinced her she had none. Gabourey Sidibe's story entered a new and deeply human chapter the moment she realized she could finally move through the world with less pain than she had carried for years. Because after surgery, she began swimming, training with professionals, following a nutritionist-guided plan, and slowly discovering what it felt like to live in a body that wasn't constantly fighting itself. She even joked proudly that she could swim 46 meters in just over 20 seconds, an accomplishment that symbolized not vanity but victory over a lifetime of struggle. And yet, even in this newfound peace, the internet predictably erupted with opinions about her body. Because as always, women's bodies are treated as public property. Some people celebrated her weight loss as proof she was finally getting healthy, using her transformation as ammunition to shame her former size, while others, especially from within the body-positive movement, accused her of betrayal, of shrinking herself to appease Hollywood, of abandoning the very people who once saw her as a symbol of radical self-love. And the strangest part was that critics from both sides, fat shamers and former supporters, felt equally entitled to judge her choices. Rumors spread like wildfire. Clickbait headlines began attributing dramatic, exaggerated weight loss photos to her that weren't even her, reducing her actual journey, the nuanced, painful, complicated truth, to sensationalized fiction, as if losing weight made her less interesting unless the transformation was extreme enough to shock people. And yet, Gabourey moved through the chaos with remarkable clarity and grace. She continued championing body positivity while openly acknowledging her health struggles. She insisted, over and over again, that her surgery was not self-hatred but self-preservation, not a surrender to beauty standards but a refusal to die. She emphasized that she owed no one a specific body type, not Hollywood, not the internet, not even the body-positive movement that once placed her on a pedestal she never asked for. She didn't owe thinness as proof of success or fatness as proof of loyalty. She owed herself a life, and for her, survival required medical intervention that came with visible changes. The transformation was never about beauty, it was always about staying alive long enough to experience the kind of peace, love, and joy she once thought she'd never receive. And that joy arrived in the most unexpected, beautiful way in March 2019 when she met Brandon Frankel on the exclusive dating app Raya, a space where celebrities can date without fear of exploitation. Their first date lasted over 7 hours, a marathon of instant chemistry, vulnerability, humor, and connection. Brandon, already cautious from a previous marriage, was disarmed by her intelligence and unfiltered honesty, while Gabby, conditioned by years of internalized rejection, couldn't believe someone like him genuinely saw her, wanted her, and chose her. 3 months later, Brandon proposed in a room filled with balloons, rose petals, and their 2 beloved cats watching approvingly. On March 12, 2021, they married in total privacy, keeping their marriage secret for over a year, until Gabby casually revealed it during an interview by saying she'd been married long before her public wedding date, a revelation that stunned fans and delighted everyone who adored her humor and rebellious spirit. Then, in February 2024, she announced she was pregnant with twins, posting a hilariously on-brand caption claiming they were simply giving their cats some responsibility, a joke that exploded with love from fans and celebrity friends, including Octavia Spencer. In April 2024, at age 40, Gabourey delivered her twins, a boy named Cooper, a name Brandon had always cherished, and a girl named Maya, named during a baby moon in the Mayan Riviera, with both children carrying traditional West African middle names honoring her Senegalese heritage. Motherhood transformed her again, not physically but emotionally. She speaks openly about the chaos, exhaustion, joy, and identity shifts that come with raising twins. And in every photo and video she shares, she glows with a happiness that radiates beyond size or appearance. Today her twins are toddling, babbling, forming little personalities she describes as cartoons come to life. And the love she feels for them has reshaped her understanding of self-worth, purpose, and strength. So what does Gabourey Sidibe look like today? She looks like a woman who survived not just Hollywood's cruelty, but her own internal battles. Someone who walked through fire and rebuilt herself with intention and love. She looks like someone who chose life over ideology, health over expectation, peace over performance. She looks like someone who refuses to apologize for doing what was necessary to save her own life. She looks like a mother, a wife, an actress, a survivor, and most importantly, a woman finally free. Free from the voices that once told her she would never matter. Free from the industry that tried to define her worth. Free from the weight, emotional and physical, that nearly destroyed her. You won't believe what Gabourey Sidibe looks like today, because she looks liberated, joyful, healthy, fulfilled, and completely herself. And that is the only transformation that ever truly mattered.